Back into the Storm, Chapter 2. What Antidepressant Withdrawal Did to My Mind. There was a time when I no longer trusted my own mind. Looking back now, I don't think I realised how frightening that was until much later. At the time, I was simply trying to survive each day as it came, hoping that tomorrow might somehow feel different. Instead, my thoughts became increasingly unfamiliar, and with every passing week, I felt a little further away from the person I had always known myself to be. It didn't happen overnight. Through my years of tapering antidepressants, I noticed subtle changes. My concentration wasn't what it had been. I struggled to retain information and found it increasingly difficult to focus for long periods of time. My thoughts often felt fearful, anxious, and overwhelming. There were moments when I could still recognize myself, and others when I felt as though I was watching my life from a distance, wondering what had happened to the woman I used to be. At the time, I blamed myself. I thought I wasn't trying hard enough. I thought I needed to be stronger. Looking back now, I understand that my brain was working incredibly hard to adapt while I navigated the injury antidepressants had caused. What felt like weakness was in reality a nervous system under enormous strain. If you've read my memoir, you'll know that my journey of antidepressants was anything but straightforward. Withdrawal accompanied me throughout the 19 plus years of failed tapering attempts and my final taper. But for me, the most difficult chapter began after my final dose. I want to say gently that this was my experience, not everyone's. Every withdrawal journey is different. Looking back, I believe many factors contributed to the severity of mine, including the length of time I had taken antidepressants, previous medication changes, numerous failed tapering attempts, and what I now understand to have been kindling. Although I believed I was tapering carefully, I can also see that my final reductions were still too fast and too much for my nervous system to handle. As the weeks turned into months, it became harder and harder to recognize my own thinking. My mind never seemed to rest. From the moment I opened my eyes each morning until I finally fell asleep at night, my thoughts raced relentlessly. Every sensation in my body became another question. Every new symptom became another fear. My mind searched constantly for answers, but no answer ever seemed reassuring enough. Was this really withdrawal? Would I ever recover? Had I permanently damaged my brain? Would I ever feel like myself again? Those questions circled endlessly. Looking back now, I understand why reassurance rarely lasted. My nervous system was living in a constant state of threat. At the time, I didn't know that. I simply believed something permanently terrible had happened to me, and I couldn't see a way through it. Perhaps the hardest part wasn't the fear itself. It was that antidepressant withdrawal began telling me lies. Thoughts appeared that felt completely unlike me. It convinced me that I was a burden, that the people I loved would somehow be better off without me. At times, I experienced suicidal thoughts that were so completely at odds with the person I'd always been that they terrified me. Looking back now, I can see that my mind had been hijacked by withdrawal. At the time, though, those thoughts didn't feel like symptoms. They felt like truth. Thankfully, somewhere beneath all that fear, I held on to something that would prove incredibly important. During my search to understand what was happening to me, I'd read enough about antidepressant withdrawal to know that frightening, intrusive thoughts and suicidal ideation could, for some people, be part of withdrawal itself. That knowledge didn't stop the thoughts, but it reminded me that I didn't have to face them alone. Whenever those thoughts became overwhelming, I told someone. I spoke honestly to the people I loved. I spoke to my doctor. Together, we put a safety plan in place while I moved through the most intense years of withdrawal. I want to pause here because this feels important. If you're reading this and these thoughts feel painfully familiar, please don't carry them on your own. You deserve support, compassion, and understanding. Tell someone you trust, speak to your doctor or another healthcare professional, and if you ever feel that you may act on these thoughts or you don't feel safe, seek immediate help from your local emergency or crisis service. Reaching out isn't a sign that you failed, it's an act of courage, and you deserve every bit of support available to you. One of the cruelest things about antidepressant withdrawal is that they can make those thoughts feel convincing. It can make you believe that they are your own. Looking back now, I know they weren't. They were part of the injury and the storm my nervous system was desperately trying to navigate. Alongside the relentless fear came another loss that I hadn't expected. I slowly lost confidence in my own mind. My memory became unreliable, my attention drifted constantly, and even simple decisions could leave me feeling overwhelmed. Tasks that had once felt effortless suddenly required enormous mental energy, and I found myself relying on notes, reminders, and written lists simply to get through the day. It was deeply unsettling. Not because I'd forgotten where I'd left my keys or misplaced my shopping list, but because I no longer felt able to trust my own thinking. The independence I'd always taken for granted slowly slipped away, and with it came grief that I didn't yet have the words to describe. At the time, I couldn't imagine that any of this would ever change, but with time, support, coping techniques, mindset skills, and heaps of self-compassion, it did. Looking back now, I wish I could gently place my hand on that frightened version of myself and whisper the words she needed the most. This isn't who you are. This isn't who you'll always be. She wouldn't have believed me then, but I know now that both of those things were true. Healing didn't arrive all at once. There wasn't a morning when I woke up and suddenly recognized myself again. Instead, recovery appeared so quietly that I almost overlooked it. One day I realized I'd concentrated for a little longer than usual. Another day I remembered something without reaching for a notebook. A simple task that had once felt overwhelming became just a little easier. At the time, I didn't see these moments as healing. Looking back now, I realized they were my brain slowly finding its way back. I stopped measuring progress by huge milestones and began celebrating the smallest victories. Sometimes my goal for the day was to simply spend 5 minutes colouring, reading, or sitting quietly in the garden. It didn't seem like much then. Those gentle moments slowly became the foundations on which my confidence began to rebuild. Time was undoubtedly one of the greatest healers, but I also learned that healing from antidepressant withdrawal wasn't simply about waiting. Therapy became an important part of my recovery. Alongside the coping strategies and nervous system regulation techniques I slowly gathered along the way. None of them offered an instant solution, but together they helped me feel a little safer inside my own mind. As the months turned into years, the relentless noise gradually became quieter. My concentration improved, my memory became clearer, the constant catastrophic thinking that had once consumed every waking hour slowly loosened its grip. Perhaps the greatest surprise wasn't simply that my mind recovered, it was that I discovered parts of myself that had been waiting patiently underneath. My curiosity returned, my creativity returned. For so many years, I had lived in survival mode. As healing continued, I found myself wanting to learn, to write, and eventually to help other people navigating antidepressant withdrawal. Looking back now, I don't think I found a new version of myself. I simply found my way back to the woman I believe had been numbed by years of antidepressants, before withdrawal finally forced me to rebuild her from the ground up. If you're listening to this while wondering whether you'll ever think clearly again, I want you to know that I remember asking myself exactly the same question. I can't tell you what your recovery after antidepressants will look like because everyone's journey is different, but I hope this chapter leaves you with one gentle truth to hold on to. Withdrawal can convince you that you've lost yourself forever. It convinced me of that too, but it was wrong. Before you go, a personal note from me. If this chapter felt familiar, I'm truly sorry that you're walking this road. Everything I share in this series comes from lived experience and from a heartfelt desire to become the person I so desperately needed during my own withdrawal. I hope these words remind you that you're not alone and that even when healing feels impossibly slow, it can still be happening. Where to go next? If this chapter resonated with you, I'd love to share something I wish someone had placed into my hands during my own withdrawal. My free guide, 5 Truths I Learned the Hard Way About Surviving Antidepressant Withdrawal, was written to offer reassurance, validation, and hope to anyone trying to make sense of this journey. You can download it for free by joining my mailing list. When you join, I'll also send you each new chapter of the Back to the Storm series, along with my latest blogs, gentle encouragement, and survival-led resources, so you don't have to walk this road alone. Take gentle care. Claire.